Hello and welcome everyone to the design session of Appreciative Inquiry and Visuals. I am so in love with the session. I'm trying to figure out how can I turn this into like a month-long class, because this in and of itself is where everything comes together. So I'd love for you to start out just by sharing, just think for a moment and then share in the chat a recent win or accomplishment. And I just want to start out this session with a recent win or accomplishment. And I'll add one too. So what happened this week that you feel really good about? You think, yeah, that was great. I'm glad that happened. Doesn't have to be huge. It could be a small win. Could be personal, professional. Session with your team where you connected to complex topics with patience and care. Oh, that's great. And presented a 2-year leadership path to your client. And he said, when can we roll this out? So this is what I love, because what I was going to ask you next is why was this important? Right. And so it's obvious because you've written some things here, but I'd love to hear from you. And I want to be able to feel it too. Why was it important for this to happen? Go ahead and unmute. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, you want me to talk first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, it really aligns with my purpose to build a community of Sal Bona leaders who live in their gifts and their purpose and support others in living in theirs. And Rob, who is the president of this hospitality organization, he's really a good man. He is really what I call a Sal Bona leader. He really sees and accepts his people for who they are and wants to help develop them. So yeah, it's been this client is not one where it's like my corporate client where I do things by the in a kind of a straightforward way. They're like this.
Right. Right.
Serious. So
Yeah.
I have to think like this. And it's very interesting how I have to bring things to them so that they can see it.
Nice. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Thank you. Marina, can you share why it was important? Your success this week was important?
Yeah, I think Susan made the point. I didn't realize, but when you just said it, yeah, definitely it's related to my purpose. So for people to be able to solve issues and navigate issues with peace and in a civilized way. And for us, what worked was that we did a check-in that I think it made us more aware of how do we relate when conversations are about very like complex and systemic and, this sense of frustration. So that, I think that helped us to be more aware of our own feelings about how complex things are. It helped the conversation to flow with more patience.
Nice. Nice. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. For me, I love hearing this, and I wanted us to start to talk about those things because I wanted you to feel into what it feels like to be able to share accomplishments at the beginning of the meeting, right? What does that win look like? And for me, it was tech hosting for the Center of Appreciative Inquiry. So the director is teaching the certification for AI facilitator training, and I get to be in the room. And I went through that training, but I get to be there again and watch people as they have those paradigm shifts. And I've been tech hosting for a while, and I've created a course around it. And it's just nice to be able to apply it, not just for people that are having meetings, but to learn this, what I feel is really important work. So, and I think it's important that we tell those stories, we share those stories, and that they be felt and understood by others. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do today in design. So we talk about the purpose of this course being about learning practical applications of integrating appreciative inquiry and visuals into meeting design. But today's session is to create customized templates that support the desired outcomes of our clients. And so hopefully you had an opportunity to put together a draft purpose statement, maybe even have a draft or even a past or future agenda, so that we can do some co-creating around that and maybe just get some thoughts around that. And then how is that going to help it happen? Well, we had the welcome, and it was really celebrating our wins. I'm going to talk about starting your meeting with a celebration in a visual way. We're going to visualize your agenda. I'm going to, it's an article that I also wrote, and then I'm going to share a case study using visuals to support the facilitated process. And then we're, like I said before, we're going to make customized templates to meet those clients' desired outcomes. That's what the whole process, this whole phase of design is about, is taking what we have gathered so far in the define, discover, and dream phase. And this is where rubber hits the road. Well, actually, it happens when the session starts, but this is where the designing of that important session happens. All right, so hopefully today you're going to walk away with more visual templates and inspiration to customize your own to meet your client's desired outcomes. I keep saying that, I'm like pounding it into you, right? Because I want us to know what it is they want so that we can help them get there. So this is an article that I wrote. It's a blog post that I wrote for the Center for Appreciative Inquiry, and I will put that in the chat, but I'm also going to share a whole resource list with you. And this particular piece I've been doing for many years in different formats. One time it was for a long time they were mountains. What are our accomplishments? What do we get to the top of the mountain? And it was really great to be able to ask that question about what did we accomplish this year that had true meaning? And in this particular case, where you see the iceberg on the right, for this client, it was for a local arts center, and they really wanted to focus on how to become a thriving nonprofit. And there is a wonderful model, and I believe it's called the 14 attributes of a thriving nonprofit. And she wanted us to kind of self-assess where we were. So I started out the meeting with our accomplishments, and I asked her to give me a list of accomplishments. And that's what you're seeing in the top middle part of the iceberg. And I wrote that in. That's the only thing that I took to the client that was already pre-written in. And you can't see it here, but I separated it according to the 5 pillars of the 14 attributes. So it was about people, money, programming, messaging, and something about like their tenacity or something like that. And so I put that in the middle, and then I had her review it. So she really set the tone with the meeting to let everyone know this is what we've accomplished in the last year. And then I came in to facilitate, and I said, what else? What else did we accomplish? What else can we add to this list? And I added that around the outside of the iceberg. And then I asked the question, what helped you get there? What are the attributes and the strengths and the skill sets that you have that help you get there? And they talked about communication and collaboration, passion, flexibility, tenacity, and grit. And I wrote all of those at the bottom. Then later on in the meeting, several different exercises and facilitated visuals later, I had them do a heat map, which means I wrote out the 14 attributes and asked them to rate themselves according to how strong they felt they were in that attribute. And we did a big heat map. So we had this visual map that was probably about 20 feet long, and it had all these dots all over it. And we could stand back and look at it. And I said, what is it that we need to focus on the most? And they took their top 3 priorities. And I said, let me remind you how you're going to get there if you're not already there. And I pointed back at this iceberg and talked to them about what was underneath that waterline, those strengths and those skill sets. And it was really a confirming thing after they had seen that they were kind of weak in some areas. And then they were able to go off and actually do some strategic planning around those things. So just wanted to show you that an icebreaker or setting the tone, or even some kind of a meeting principle, try to tie those into those desired outcomes. And for me, the client wanted to be able to get to that thriving nonprofit. And so I pulled together all these visuals, but this was the one that I started the meeting off with. Okay. Now, the next one that I wrote is called Engage Your Meeting Participants by Visualizing Your Agenda. So I love this because this is literally the way that I work. I get the agenda from the client at some point during the process. Maybe I already know their desired outcomes. I'm sure hope I do by the time I have their agenda. And then I start creating those visuals. And what you see there to the right is an actual visual that a client asked me to write, to draw up, because they'd never worked with a visual practitioner before. And they said, what is this going to look like? And I said, well, it depends on what's said in the room. But I showed them examples of my work, and they said, no, we really want to see what it's going to look like. And I said, well, I can't write anything down until you say it, but I will give you sort of a map. And it was aligned with the agenda that they gave me, and they gave me a very detailed, facilitated agenda guide. It had questions and everything in it. So I was like, this is going to be easy. We get into the room. These weren't facilitators. They were consultants, and they did not facilitate to the agenda that they gave me. So it did not look anything like this, but I gave them what they wanted in terms of, okay, here's the guide. And I went, okay, but you didn't facilitate to this. And by the end, it ended up being way better than they ever anticipated. They brought in the C-suite team, and we gave them a gallery walk. It was two 20-foot charts. We gave them a gallery walk, and on the spot, the C-suite team gave them the full funding and support they needed for their project, just by looking at all of the visuals in the room that reflected the conversations. So this is one of my favorite things to be able to share, is how do you take those agenda items, each agenda item, and maybe not every single agenda item has a visual, but if you wanted to, if you look at this, we've got like a SWOT, we've got a SWOT chart, and we've got some other things that look a little bit like the Grove, and I'll be talking about that today. But these are just customized pieces to help them with their agenda. So any questions before I jump into a recent case study that I had?
Heather, so, okay, so you took an agenda for a meeting, is that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you visualized the agenda?
Yes. So this is the visual agenda, but these actual pieces here would then later become a large chart, a large drawing that I was graphic recording. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't the facilitator. There were two consultants in the room that were facilitating the agenda that they gave me. I was writing everything down, but they didn't facilitate to that. They just had a conversation. So it was a crazy, messy conversation, and I did my best to make it look neat and clean. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, I'm sorry, because it's kind of small and blurred. So,
right. Well, part of that is because it's client work. I just wanted you to get like a snapshot. We're not gonna dive deep into this.
Yeah, but it's the left the agenda, and then the right is what you did in when
No, the left is the article that I wrote that you can, yeah. So let me just show you quickly, and then I'll answer your question, Marina. Yeah, no worries. You're going to have access to this. This is a blog post that I wrote for the Center for Appreciative Inquiry. And so I'm just telling the benefits of visuals. And then I talk about, there are 5 pieces here that are visual, that go into this actual agenda that's down here. And that is setting the tone by using an ORS chart. That's from the Grove. That's objectives. No, agenda, I'm sorry, ORS, outcomes, agenda, roles, and responsibilities. And then I talk about let's celebrate, and that was the one I just told you about. So the
iceberg.
Iceberg would be there. There was a session on starting with why, figuring out the why, and the presenter gave a talk about and led the group through Simon Sinek's book, Uh-huh. And then because we don't really use SWOT in appreciative inquiry, we use SOAR. I switched this to SOAR. And then at the very end, whenever I want to capture what are the next steps, and also no kidding, who's going to do what by when, I do what's called a who, what, when chart. And that's just capturing the next steps.
I see.
So
this visual has a lot of different methods. I mean,
yes.
different methods, like you have the Grove method and you have Simon's method, which I've used before. And then you came up with this, the iceberg. Was that because they were talking about what their wins were, or was that
Yes. Yeah. Celebrating the wins.
celebrate?
So what I'm showing you here is that there's this natural progression in an agenda, right? You start out with the objectives, the agenda, who's going to do what. You can say rules. I like to say agreements. And then, then you're setting the tone. Then you're getting right to the core of where you want to go in the meeting. Maybe there's some discussion and some decision pieces. And then there's the final piece. Now, I had a big white piece of paper with the agenda I showed you previously in my head, and I also had it written down in my notes. So it was starting to play out as I went. But if you're not a visual practitioner used to writing really fast and facilitating and talking and drawing, all of that, then you could literally, if you wanted to, have either a whole wall of these or just a flip chart of each one of these that you're speaking to, and then writing down the key takeaways as people are talking.
So could you, like, if you had an agenda, I mean, you came up with an agenda for the client based on what their needs were and what they said, right? And can you put on the flip chart the visual first and then fill them in, or how does that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, because it would take me a long time to like draw and then do all this.
Exactly. And so some of us that are visual practitioners, that's our only role, or we're co-facilitating with a facilitator, right? And so just know that this is an option for those who are facilitators that want to prepare their chart before they go into the room.
Yeah, I love it. It looks so cool.
Thanks. Well, this is a stock photo that I put the chart in. Like I just pasted it in there. So it's not like this wasn't a real thing, but
right.
yeah.
No, but it gives me the idea of what you do. No, I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Marina, what questions you have?
No, I'm remembering one day we had the whole appreciative inquiry process to use just in one meeting, no? And you gave us a template. And here, what I understand is that you really get what is the outcome of the meeting, and you design a template to facilitate that meeting, no, visually. So at the end of the meeting, they filled that up. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. What will happen? Yeah.
Talk to me. What's happening? I can see those. I can see those.
No,
those
it's okay.
wheels.
But yeah, I guess this is for a meeting that we are preparing in advance. Maybe the appreciative inquiry template can be more for meetings that are not so structured, like on an everyday basis, to use it as a base. And this is just for.
Yeah, I think I'm a little confused about what you're referring to. So let me just grab it really quick and see if I can find it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why my mind is coming back to that template you gave us.
Are you talking about this? Yeah.
Yeah, so there was one that was just kind of empty. And
it's the same thing and it's empty. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was meant to be something that maybe we could use in one meeting, no? So
you use that in the discovery meeting. You use it in the discovery meeting, right? So you're literally gathering information. If sometimes you can write in here beforehand. If it's empty in the middle, you can write their purpose. You can write who's in the meeting. You can write the date. In the discovery part, here's where we're asking about, tell me a time when you were successful. Tell me a time, or tell me about your project. Tell me about the strengths of your people. We're writing about people. If they talk about time, let's draw a timeline. If they talk about places, let's put markers. If they're talking about ideas or dreams, it's light bulbs and clouds. If it's about something, a product they want to do, draw a box, right? Here is where we do the dream part. You can use any one of the visuals that I gave you for the dream, or you can just start asking questions, right? You could literally start asking questions about that dream state
Yeah.
You've got some of those AI questions, and you can just take notes here. I use this for taking notes in every discovery meeting that I have. And then we get to the design phase. That's where we are here today. And we're going to talk about, well, we're not going to talk about all of these things today because I want to really dive into the visuals, but we've got logistics, right? Is this an in-person or is this a virtual meeting or a hybrid? And we've got to design, if we're going to do hybrid, we have to design for 3 meetings, the in-person meeting, the online meeting, and where those 2 meetings come together, right? And we have to have backup plans. This could also mean, is somebody bringing in lunch? Just what are all the logistics and the people involved? What's the group size? Are we in plenary? Do we break out into pairs? Do we come back into plenary? Do we go to small groups? Do we go back into plenary? What is that structure looking like? And how is the agenda following that so that we really make sure that people are engaged? And speaking of engaged, what's the energy in the room? Right? Are we starting up on a high note? Are we asking people to really dig deep into thinking and harvesting what they need to know? And where, are we keeping that people, again, it's all about engagement. And then these little visuals here are to remind us about the process. If we have an actual agenda, a laid out agenda, what are the steps, just like the graphic that I just showed you with all those visuals, what's the process and the visual templates to support that? And then finally, the delivery. So when I'm in the discovery phase or when I'm in the discovery meeting with clients, in this deliver part, I'm literally writing down, what do I need to get to them next? What's my next step? I need to write the statement of work. I need to do a follow-up email. I may need to send them samples of my work. And then I need to get them to maybe give me a deposit. And then we'll set up our next meeting to go over the agenda and finalize the desired outcome. Right? So I'm really using this. I use it on all levels. This is the 5D process. I use it to capture information during the discovery meeting, but then I use this. These are my notes. I mean, this goes with me all the way to the meeting. I print this out. I mean, it's not this one because I've written all over it. It's usually printed this way.
You have an empty one.
I have it. It's usually, horizontal, and then I write all over it. Any paperwork that I have, I put with it, I fold it over, put the client's name on the front. That's my folder. That's how I work. Yeah.
Yeah. My question was because I see all the visuals that you share that I would love to go deep on them as well. But I know that will be something that we will prepare, having very clear outcome with some time in advance. But if we jump in a meeting that is not so structured, as it happens to me sometimes, even with my team, we have a weekly meeting and we make our agenda. Would it be possible? Yeah, I think what you meant also is that this template could be used for one meeting, not to try to go through the whole process in one meeting. Would that be possible?
It depends on what the purpose of the meeting is. Hi, Makeda. Okay. It depends on what the purpose of the meeting is.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, are you training them how to be AI? I mean, I don't know. Is it important that you use that? I think it's just about
guess for me, it's just I'm thinking to experiment.
Sure.
It's important that we experiment.
Where are we in the process? I was wondering
if it's possible, you think, in a 1 hour and a half meeting to go through the cycle. Just as
I don't know what your purpose is. So you've got to always go back to the purpose. What's the purpose of the meeting? For me, that chart is just for, it's not just for a discovery meeting, but it's for a discovery meeting. And why would you use it for anything else? What is it that you're trying to harvest from them to get them to do? And now if it's a core team of people that you're planning a bigger event, sure, you can walk them through the process of, we're going to plan this event and let's go through this process. Do I think it could happen in an hour and a half? I don't know. How long do they want to dream? You know?
And what you mean is that in this discovery meeting is the draft that you will try to discover all of it. So you have a guide, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
So
sure.
Can I ask you, Heather, when, the visuals that you just showed us, right? When you said you just carry around the circle with the names, or do you carry around the circle with the names and all those visuals? Because those visuals are kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of maybe what I miss when I'm doing this process. So
what do you mean I carry around a circle?
well, okay, so you know how you had the AI process, okay, the AI process, right? And you have the discover, the dream, design, the deliver, right? Then you had all those visuals around it, right?
This is our visual agenda for the class.
Right, I know
Okay.
that. But what I'm saying is, when you go into a meeting, you have to write on it. You write on that piece of paper that you have. Are you writing over all the visuals that you have?
No, it's blank. I gave you the blank version.
Okay, that's what I meant. But what I'm saying is that all the little icons that you have around there are really cool for me because it reminds me of stuff to be able to look for, which I may not look for unless I have something to remind myself. So my question is, the blank thing is when I say blank, I mean, you have the process. You can write on it, but I guess I could carry around the other thing to remind me that I'm looking at the pictures going, oh yeah, energy in the room. I mean,
sure, absolutely. That can be your checklist. That can be, you can shrink it down as small as you can still read it and use that as a reference. To me, it's ingrained in my head, right? As visual people. So this is a great learning opportunity for Susan because Marina and Makeda are both visual people. We have what we call, and maybe you call it differently, visual libraries that are in our head. It's like knowing a second language. We have these in our heads. We have them in our backpacks. We bring them with us. We think this way. Yeah. So for you, it might be, you might put it in a protective sleeve and carry it with you in a notebook or something like that and use it as a checklist or a referral. And that's what that's what our homework or our handouts are too. These are just the beginning of a checklist. I am not trying to be prescriptive whatsoever, but they are a beginning of a checklist so that you can then go back and refer to them as you need, right? So for this define and discover, this is just for you to know your own value and to be able to express that to your client. That's all, or to look for it in them, right? It's about knowing your client and be thinking about what it is you want to create with them and for them. And then we get into this design piece, and this is what I'm hoping you've brought with you today, is just a draft purpose statement, because every meeting needs to have a purpose, or otherwise people are like, this could have been an email, or we could have spent our time doing something else, right? And then these are just suggestions about considering what to think about as you're in that design phase. So you might look at these questions and say, what's the, is this an appropriate thing to ask? Right? And we started out with, will the session be held in person or online? How many people are going to be in the room? You've got to be thinking about, all those things. And then after you're finished, go back and check out this checklist. Do you have all of the flip charts that you need, all of the wall charts that you need? Are you going to do a live recording? And then I've just added these because it came up in the dream session, because all of you were in my head. I just threw out see, hear, feel, understand, and how to take action. You were like, what was that? So I put it in the chat, right? So I'm like, okay, it needs to be on this checklist. We need to make sure after we're finished that we've designed an agenda that people do have all of these, right? And there's another piece that I didn't mention, and this is so important. After taking action, not only are we giving them the tools, meaning that who, what, when chart, the actual in the room tool of how to take action, but we also ask the people that are going to give them top cover and opportunities, like their bosses. Are they going to give them opportunities to do this? Are they going to support them? Are they going to empower them? But what's even more important is, are we designing for the margins? Right? So we're designing a meeting. Yes, it needs to be AI. I mean, if this is why we're taking the class, right? AI and visuals, but we also need to make sure that people have it's accessible. If they're in a wheelchair, can they get in the building? If they're having hearing issues, do we have closed captions on? Are there things in there that are really going to help them? So this design piece is really important, that we're capturing, we're creating visuals and AI opportunities for them to be able to do that. Yeah. I love it. So this is so great. I love this because in the first couple of sessions, all of you were so good at being at the balcony and being on the dance floor, being at the balcony and being on the dance floor. And you were like jamming, right? You were asking me questions, especially the how. We get to the how and you're like, back up. What about that thing you already showed us? It's like, hold on. You know that already. That's the whole foundation of it. And maybe it's starting to unfold in a way that you didn't notice before, right? You were on the dance floor. Now you're on the balcony and you're starting to see the value of that.
I think for me, it's about the integration.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can present to me a framework, you can present to me all this information.
Right.
But now my head is going, how do I integrate all of this into what I do for my clients, myself, all this other things?
That's deliver. Yeah. So you are integrating this as you go, because I remember when we met in the office hours, you had some really great technical questions and you're like, oh, I'm going to use that. You're like, that's the thing, right? You had a specific need and I told you how to do that technically. Now, have you put it into practice yet? Maybe not. Maybe you haven't, looked into Mural or Miro, but that's what this course is about, is giving you those pieces. And then you can then decide when you're in that design phase, what piece or what tool or what thing do I want to pull from? And I don't expect you, Susan, to be a full-fledged visual practitioner when you leave this session. I mean, those of us that are doing this, we've been training for years, right? And I don't expect the visual people in the room to be, master facilitators, because sometimes our role is just drawing, just listening, drawing, and synthesizing. But it's nice to have a framework like appreciative inquiry to hold that facilitated process in a visual way. This is literally all coming together now in this moment. Can you feel it? I think you can. I love it. Well, let me share with you, good, because I'm about to blow your mind. No, I'm going to share with you. This was back in 2016. So this was shortly after I had gotten my appreciative inquiry training. I had been a visual practitioner for a couple of years, but please be gentle on me, Marina and Makeda, because this was before I did any lettering. So my lettering was awful. It was like not good. So here's my agenda, right? This is simple. This was just a flip chart that I wrote up before I got into the room. And it's a welcome. We're going to overview of the tenets. This is what the client liked to use. They didn't want to say desired outcomes. They wanted to use the word tenets. That's fine. We're going to take a process journey. So I was going to walk them through. I had all the charts on the wall that we were going to facilitate too. And I did this because this particular organization would just talk nonstop if you didn't tell them, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 2, here's chapter 3 kind of thing. And then I gave them placemats to take away, and I'll show you those in a minute. Then I went right into an appreciative inquiry interview storytelling session. We did a creative matrix. We did a prioritization matrix. I'm going to show you all of these. And then I said, if time allows, we're going to be able to do a project inventory pyramid. And they were like, what's that? They were all excited about that. Then I'm going to show you the decision funnel tool that you can take away and help you make decisions. That's that action part, right? What are the actual action items? And then a gallery walk. So this was a 1.5 hour event. And I knew we weren't going to get through all of it, but I wanted to give them something to really see this was the journey that we're on, because they came to me and said, we want to be able to change the culture of our agency. And I said, we're not going to do that over lunch, but we are going to create a plan and a runway, and we might have to use this agenda for the next 2 or 3 meetings, right? So this was our agenda, pretty aggressive. We had both an objective, purpose, and desired outcomes, because the client came to me and said they wanted to familiarize the people in the room with the tenets of being what's called a master builder. Think about Legos and the master builder, the Lego movie. They saw themselves as people that were really foundational in the organization and wanted to change the culture. So they had their objective and purpose. And I said, okay, but what do you want to get out of this time together? What's your final what? They wanted to create a team out of this bunch of lone wolves, that was their language, by inviting others with them to become these master builders. We had little buttons and we'd wear them around and people would say, what's that button? let's talk about it, and it was a conversation piece. But we also wanted to create a working matrix of ideas, a whole bunch of ideas, but we wanted to create a structure, a visual structure for them so that they can then prioritize and create a decision model so that they could work going forward, even if they were working asynchronously. So what does this mean? This was an agency of over 5,000 people, and there were 12 people in the room. And they were from different parts of the entire agency. And they knew that they had to go back and sort of, in a way, infiltrate their departments to be able to start to change the culture. Okay, so we start out with a sustainability garden. And I think you might have heard me say this before. If not, that's fine. And I have some really great visuals I'm going to share with you later on that don't look like this, but it's just a really nice sustainability garden. You just write that across the top, because parking lots are where great ideas go to die, or they get parked and forgotten about. But a sustainability garden is where we can plant seeds and seed ideas and help nurture them and grow. So these were just some of the this was some of the things that showed up in the sustainability garden. It doesn't happen at the beginning. We just kind of have it to the side, and as things come up, if it doesn't go along with the agenda, we put it there, and then we come back at the end and we review them to make sure that they have a place. If we didn't already cover it, where are we going to put it in the next agenda? And then this was the placemat that the client gave me. I said, because they were like, we want to draw. And I was like, okay, well, you start out by making the placemat, because I figured it was really simple. They could prepare it in advance. So this was what they created out of, like, I don't know, PowerPoint or something, right? It's a cloud and a box. That's it. And then this was the back side. It was a couple of boxes. And it was really funny because they're like, yay, I got graphic. I was like, okay, some of us draw, but that's fine. That's great. And they picked out a fun little font for treasure chest. But this was just the piece that the people in the room could take notes on, right? We could have really zhuzhed it up and made all kinds of graphics, but I wanted them to be a part of the planning process. So then what I did is we talked about setting the tone at the beginning of the meeting. I started out with just the drawing in the middle, and at the top it said attributes of a positive culture. I said, what does a positive culture look like? What are the attributes of a positive culture? And I had them do a 3-2-1. A 3-2-1 is where you take 3 minutes and just free write. Just have them free write, put up a timer, and then give them 2 minutes to edit that free write down so that they can share it out with people, so that they're just not reading what they wrote for 3 minutes, that they really take some time and come up with a succinct thing to share, and then take a minute to share. Now, why is that important? Can anybody tell me why a 3-2-1 is a really great exercise for a room full of people?
And it's a process of culling ideas before it all gets dumped into the space, right? It's about efficiency of time, and particularly with those verbal processors who want to give you all that extra around it. You're asking them, okay, great, you had your little dump, now narrow it down, and then we'll share for a minute. So it's a, for lack of a better term, a culling exercise.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you nailed it. You'll get a bunch of extroverts that'll say whatever they want, and then they're going to guide that conversation. And then we're not going to get everything. We're not going to get those hidden gems from the introverts. But by inviting everyone to write and free write for 3 minutes, you're also creating quiet space in an otherwise really busy day. And it's a great practice. Okay. So when they came back, they started just telling me all these things, right? And notice.
Sorry, Heather, how do you call this 3-2-1? What's the name of this?
3-2-1?
Yeah. Does it have a name? This kind of.
Yeah. 3-2-1.
Okay.
That's it. That's it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it has another name. That's what I call it.
3-2-1 is good. I will remember that. 3
minutes of journaling, 2 minutes of editing, and 1 minute of sharing. That also keeps people succinct and efficient. Yeah. And notice that when I was writing down what they were saying, so this was the live part, they're giving me a minute, right? So they might have had 1, 2, or 3 things that they shared. Well, a positive culture is based on respect. Notice that I made respect the big, bold word. Default to yes. Yes is a big, bold word. Sense of ownership. There are no roads. Ownership is the big word. These are the big key takeaways that I want them to be able to see when they walk out of the room, right? So now they're feeling really good about themselves. They're like, yeah, we know what a positive culture looks like. We just created a vision together. And this vision literally took maybe 15 minutes, right? So there was the queue up, there was the 3, 2, 1, there was the sharing out, and there was like this little mini celebration. Now, what I did is I looked at these attributes and I said, okay, we're going to use these attributes to create a creative matrix. Now, this again, this was all planned out ahead of time. So here's what the creative matrix looks like. All it is a graph. You've got X and Y axis, right? That's it. And then kapow, right along the top, respect, diversity, safety, network, community, yes. And then the wild card was just like something else if it came up in the conversation. These were the top things, because what I didn't show you on the previous graphic is that they dot voted. This is where their energy was. We call that an energy gram. So these were the top 5, 6 things that they really wanted to focus on in their culture. And down the sides, remember the drawing of the people? I said I draw these people and I draw them like this because there's sticky notes that are shaped like that. They identified who those people were. Pregnant women or mothers or women of color. So a very specific minority. They talked about certain people in the organization, people with different identities. Yeah, so they were just different people. So they're creating sort of avatars, right? Or personas. And I said, okay, so if we take the attributes along the top, because this is what we want to strive for, and these are the people that we want to serve, these are the margins. And when we can design for these margins, everybody in the middle gets designed for. It's automatic, right? It's like the majority of people, they're covered. But it's these people that need or are usually oppressed by the system that they're in. I mean, we can go on about this. These are the people that we need to design for. And so what happened is I gave them a little bit more time to self-harvest. These are all their sticky notes in their handwriting. So take a few minutes and I want you to choose, I told them choose 1 to 3 of the people and then where we can help serve them, how we can serve them in these ways to have a strong culture. And luckily, I mean, you can see right along here, I mean, this was a really big one right along the bottom. There's a lot of stickies there. So there was a lot of energy there. But there were some areas that, maybe there wasn't anything in there because there wasn't anything in there we could really do or we hadn't thought of yet. So this was a really great way for me to take a picture of this, give it back to the client, and then they start making a working file where they can work on these things. But before we get there, what we did is we took all of this and we've really focused on one line and we did a deep dive on that one line because that's where most of the energy was. And it was, we had to prioritize, right? And this was a great thing that Marina shared last week was that impact and effort. So this was the actual thing that we did. Now, actually, it's not because I've just written in here. Yeah, I think this is where the meeting ended and it was like, okay, next we're going to do this. And I gave them the instructions. So if it's low effort or high effort, but low impact, you're not going to do it. But we still need to put things in there to say we're not going to do those things. If it's low effort and low impact, these are small things, they're fine to-dos, but they're not the most important thing. But when it's a low effort and high impact, these are the things we want to do first. These are going to be our quick wins. And I'm going to talk a minute about the funnel. And then the things that are going to be high impact and high effort, we need to plant some seeds, but we're not going to do them right now. We're just going to get the process started. Okay. So that was a really simple priority matrix. But in order to do that priority matrix, or once we've already done it, we need to decide what ideas do we need to converge even more. And so before we did that, we did hidden gems. Now, this is a lot of times a majority will come up with a majority thing that they all want to work on, which consensus is great. But sometimes we have some hidden gems that are just as important that we haven't addressed. And so I like to be able, as a practice, to ask people, was there something that wasn't said or something that you heard that we didn't spend enough time on that we might want to give a little bit more energy to in the next meeting? right? So I think talking about hidden gems is really key. And then we get to this decision funnel. Now, the decision funnel is how do we get to that final project or that product or whatever it is we're trying to do. And if you'll notice, we had a decision funnel. We talked about that in the dream state where we had criteria. So some of this criteria could be, does this meet our mission and vision? Right? Does this meet what it is we're trying to accomplish? Does this satisfy everyone in the organization? Whatever these criteria pieces are, again, is another way to funnel it down. And then we might even identify that, yes, these are all yeses, but do we have the right people and the authority to do this? Do we need to get permission from a boss? Do we need funding? Do we need to hire more people? All those things need to be considered. But it's visuals like this that help us take all these ideas that are in the air and get them up on the wall that we can all look at and agree to. And I will give you I'll give you copies of this too, so that you have it. So here's another fun graphic. This is called a visioneering card. So when I was in Washington, D.C., there was a team of 6 of us who put together a series of cards, a lot like the Grove cards, and I'll talk about those as well. But these were IP cards. These were our intellectual property of things that we came up with and created actual visuals to go with them. So what does that mean? This is a card, and on the back, we would talk about the concept of the exercise, how to actually facilitate it, and what are some of the variations. And how we did this, we actually came up with I think it was over 175 different exercises like this, putting facilitation and visuals together in these ways. And oops, and I'm going to share those with you now. I'm actually going to put in the Padlet, and again, this will all be in an email, but I'm going to share my screen. I've created for you a Padlet that has all kinds of visual tools in it. These are all kinds of resources for you. So starting with the 2 that we covered today, the blog posts, so they're there. Myself and Zandra Dirks and Elena, the 3 of us put on 2 classes through Neuland, that's the company that makes our markers, on how to use analog tools in digital settings. So we're literally all of these how-tos, that you were all asking me, what's that technology you were using, or what was that product you were using? These are 2 full classes of that in terms of and how that aligns in agendas and things like that. We've got appreciative inquiry resources if you're interested in the facilitator training or the resilience training. If you want some Neuland markers or tools, you can use this voucher code to get 15% off. That's my voucher code because I'm an ambassador. These are a few things that I do. I teach lettering to visual practitioners and facilitators. I teach tech hosting. Mike Muddy Schlegel is the go-to person when it comes to visuals and technology. He's sort of our person here in the US that's really great at it. And I talked about the Grove. So you can go in and click on any one of these and it's going to pop up the link. And this is the Grove Strategic Visioning Model. So Marina, when she came into the office hours this week, I was showing some Grove cards and I've got them right here. And I'm not sure. I know that if you go into products, I'm sure there's, you can buy things, you can buy their charts, you can buy all of them. But I don't know if they require you to be trained by them. And I don't think that they do because all the instructions are here, but I'll show you just with my camera here, what these cards actually look like. And so I was trained by David Sibbett at the Grove and Rachel, I can't remember Rachel's name right now, but anyway, so we talked about the ORS chart, the outcomes, the roles, or the outcomes, the agenda, the roles and rules or responsibilities. So these cards are much like the ones I was showing you about the visioneering cards. They show you what's the purpose, what the benefits are, what the steps are, and then what are some other tips. So and it even tells you how many minutes this thing should take as you do it. So, we talked about the SPOT matrix or the SWOT matrix or the SOAR, same thing. Here's how you would draw it, or you can probably purchase this chart from them, both digitally and hard copy. So you don't have to do any of this drawing if you don't want to. These are all different types of charts. And sometimes for something like a context map, I mean, look at how detailed this is. This could take 1 to 2 hours. That could be one meeting. But if you're doing an offsite, a 2 to 3 day offsite, you're going to have anywhere from 4 to 6 of these in a day that you're facilitating through the process, depending on what your approach is, right? So Susan, you might have your own methodology, or you might study a different methodology or approach where you can take some of these ideas. Well, these are all flipped upside down. You can take some of these ideas and customize them to meet your needs.
So Heather, just curious, if you did this in person with using some of these designs that they have, do they have them, I mean, do they have them printed up? I know digitally is easy to get, but or do I end up having to draw these things?
Well, so it's funny that you say that, because when I took the workshop, I asked that question and Rachel was standing right in front of me. No, Rachel was in the back of the room and David was standing right in front of me. And I said, so I know how to draw these. Can I just draw these, or do I have to purchase them from you? And I said, no. I said, can I just draw these? And David said yes, and Rachel said no. And I was like, okay, that's confusing. And so that's why I can't give you like a definite answer, but you can go to their website, go to their products and order an actual, I think it's 48 by 60 inch chart that they will ship to you. And then you can roll it out on the wall and write on it.
Interesting.
Because Heather, I'm looking at the website to see, because what you have is like a bunch of cards, no? I don't know if it is this strategic visioning agenda planning kit. Might be that.
Probably. Yeah.
I think it might be that. Then they have each one separately sold, I think. Like you can buy each of them.
Yeah, and they come with a booklet that tells you how to facilitate it.
But they have like the whole bunch of them just as a deck, no?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this deck I got when I went to my training, right? So I got everything when I went to my training. And I have to say that of this, looks like there's close to 30 different cards probably. I probably use 3 or 4 of them all the time.
Yeah.
For most things. And I know I haven't used all of them just because they haven't been appropriate, right? They just haven't been the right fit.
Yeah. For me, it's just that I tend to do a lot of graphic recording, but I don't do so much graphic facilitation. So this might be very much close to that. Yeah.
It might not be what you need. But it is another, like Susan said, it's another methodology.
Yeah. It's useful that they have all the templates also, that you can see them and buy them separately. So you kind of can see.
Exactly. Oh, so, and then I talked about the visioneering cards and how the front is a visual. This is very much modeled after the Grove, and then also the concept, how to, and the variations. And so let me show you what you'll get with that. If you go, let's scroll down, because you can still have the Padlet up, but you can also see this. The sample visioneering cards here. So the very first one, this is our framework that we were working under. This is how we all worked so that we had a product that was consistent throughout all of our clients, because there were 6 of us, right? And we were all visual practitioners and we all wanted to have the same approach. And so it took us about a year to develop these. And our approach is really based on the work of Sam Kainer. If you're familiar with him, he does group participatory decision-making. And this framework follows that because it's really simple. The framework is our method of being visual practitioners. The very first part of every meeting, you've got a start and a finish, but the very first part is all about idea sharing and people unpacking their backpacks and getting it all out, right? And then there's going to come a time where you've got to synthesize this, because we've been diverging. Now it's time to converge. So how are we going to synthesize all of this, and what models are we going to use in order to put visual form into the work that we've done during that meeting? So the back of this framework explains what that is. And then we've given you, and notice these are color coded. I'm going to go back. You see how the method is blue, the alternatives are yellow, the synthesis is red, and the models are green. And so what you're going to notice is this is blue. This is a method. This is orange. So this is the decision criteria. And this is green. This is a model. This is something we're going to walk away with at the end of the meeting. Everybody's going to have a placemat that we've been drawing on that you're going to use it could be a change management tool. It's a way for people to talk about what happened in the meeting. Okay. And then the instructions behind it. So this is just sort of an abbreviated version of all of the cards that we had. We only printed about, I want to say we only printed about 6 of them, but then we had about 175 of them in our library.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Heather, are these visioneering cards, are there something that are a product of you, or?
It's the product of our team, but our team has since disbanded. So I literally have the ones that are on my desk. So I'm giving you just some of the digital versions so you can print them out and use them. You're welcome to use them. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So when we would go to conferences like the IFVP conference, we would take hundreds of copies of these and give them to everybody because they were like, oh, I can use this in my next meeting. Yeah. Yep. And then we talked about that prioritization matrix. So this is one that you could print out, redraw if you want, or I made this into a PowerPoint file. So you could use this, these little stickies. Once you download it, you can open it up into PowerPoint and you can do this in an online meeting and have other people do it too. You can create several stickies and everybody can grab a sticky and work on it on a shared file.
Is that using the annotation?
You could use the annotation. You could also put this in a shared document, like put it in a shared folder and people can go in and work at the same time. You can do that either in PowerPoint. It would be, I think, on OneDrive or something like that. Or you could take this graphic, maybe take off the stickies, but take the graphic and stick it in a Google Doc, in a Google slide. So a lot of teams will work in Google or OneDrive or something else. You could put it on the back of a mural board or a Miro board and have them put stickies. But if you're like, that's way too much, like that's a third-party collaboration tool that you don't want to get into, absolutely. You can take these stickies off and just share this PowerPoint file and people can write on it using the annotation tool. Yeah.
I used the annotation tool, Heather, the other day, and I got a bit nuts with it because as you finish using it, things stay on the screen if you don't delete. And then I tried to download and I didn't know where it was saved. And
it's in your downloads folder. Yeah. But that's why I take a picture of it, because then it'll stay on my desktop or wherever my picture clipping does. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know, my downloads is getting funny. But yeah, I got a bit like, for me, sometimes we use a very simple, like a Jamboard from Google Drive. I know it's like the worst with format, but I think it's so simple. It helps a lot.
Do whatever it takes to keep people engaged and keep it efficient, and make sure that, by saying it's simple, you're making it equitable. You're making it accessible to people. So that's really important. So that's good. I'm just showing all these other tools in case you want to go there, because there are lots of other organizations that are. So again, this is just a bunch of resources for you. This We Are Cadabra. This is another tool that I created. And I think when you start to look at like the We Are Cadabra one, you can, and the blog post that I wrote for the Center for Appreciative Inquiry, put your, you're going to read it and you're going to be on the dance floor, but put your facilitator hat on and say, how could I create something simple like this? Because all these are just PowerPoints and things like that. There's a book here by Brian Tirallo. He was on the Visioneering team, called Surviving the Horror of Online Meetings. It's a really funny book that's really great for online facilitation. If you're familiar or not familiar with Brandy Agerbeck, she's all about visual thinking. So she's just not working with visual practitioners. She's working with anybody that wants to get better at their visual thinking and drawing. And Christina Merkley has what's called the Shift It method. But she also teaches a wonderful foundational course for those who want to become visual practitioners. That's where I started. And then Bacablo is the German version of the Grove. I guess you could say that, but I think that they've been around. Actually, visuals have been used since World War II. So we can't take credit at the Grove for being the founders of that, even though a lot of US people like to do that. That's not where it started. It actually started even before World War II. But anyway, Vocablo is the German style, and they have very specific ways of drawing, and they teach you how to draw, and that's really wonderful. But there's lots of resources in here, and again, I'd love to invite you to take it at the balcony and say, how would I incorporate this into my work? Because you have so many incredible strengths and motivations, and just what you're bringing to the field. I mean, all of us are different here, so. Anything else, any questions before we take a quick break? And then when we come back, I want you to share your purpose statements with me, because we're going to start designing some of these visuals to meet those desired outcomes.
I was just gonna say we use visuals from the caves, no?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people like to say it started there. Of course it did. And I'm sure they did some strategic planning on their hunts that way.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting topic though. Yeah.
Exactly.
All
right.
I'm just curious to know more about the Merkley, but yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Sure. Okay.
Anyways, let's take a break.
Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll see you here in 5 minutes. Excellent.
Thank you.
Right. Pardon me. All right. Welcome back. So, pardon me. So looking at the link that you put in the chat, Marina, those are, that's interesting. So the link that you gave me, those are the charts, but they are not the cards. And so if you were to click on any one of the graphics that says Quick Shop, and let me just share my screen here so it's on there for the video. So this is the link that you sent me to. These are all the charts. Maybe this is the whole kit that includes everything. Let's see, product details. Yeah, it looks like that includes the cards. So that's the whole kit. That includes the cards and then how the actual how to facilitate them, the booklets that go with each one. But then if you wanted to just grab one of these ORS charts, and I think there's like 3 different kinds, you can get it in different sizes. So 11 by 17 is close to A4 size or A3 size, and then tabletop a little bit bigger, small group. Looks like the bigger you go, you know, it's going to give it to you on the wall. So you'll be able to do it really, really large. I don't think you need an ORS chart that big though, but I've seen some groups do it. So yeah. Good. So I would love to know your purpose statement. So this came from the homework, gathering from the define and discover stage and then also the dream stage and getting to that desired outcome. What are some of your purpose statements? Now, it doesn't have to be a fully fledged out, you know, perfect desired outcome. It just needs to be something that we can wrap our heads around and that's going to help guide the agenda, right? Or some exercises in the agenda. So feel free to type a purpose statement in the chat. And if you have an agenda, go ahead and let me know in the chat that you have an agenda so I can try to manage our time, because this is where it can get a little challenging, right? So it's really easy for me to show you what I've done, but actually doing it and rolling up the sleeves, that might take some time. Okay, so we've got kick off the strategic planning process by engaging, energizing, and activating the very long acronym board. And yes, you have an agenda. Awesome. To be able to communicate to my ideal client with clarity and confidence what I offer. Excellent. Okay, so that almost feels like a marketing thing, but it's a meeting. Is that what you're trying to do in the meeting?
That's the process of AI I'm applying with a friend, or yeah, this is the testing I'm doing. And but I'm using AI, so she's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
She's I can add the agenda, but she's clarifying what her goals are. She's also clarifying, I think behind there's a lot of
so that's what you're
but
trying to do. What's the desired outcome for the client?
Yeah, that's her desired client. Yeah, that's her desired outcome. Yeah.
Her desired outcome. Oh, for her to be able to communicate.
Yeah, she wants to communicate.
Got it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, yes, that makes sense. Okay. And then Susan, to discover our values. Great. Personal and of our restaurants, what's most important to us in our lives, and to address the challenges in our restaurant. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out with Makeda, and you have an agenda. Is there a part of the agenda that because I'd love to start here, like a bigger approach, because I don't want to redesign anything you've already done, but is there any part of your agenda right now that you're like, I want help here? Oops, you're muted.
No, I mean, I'm literally running this meeting in the morning.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I've got a mash up.
So let me ask you this. How long do you have for this strategic planning process? Because this is the kickoff. What's
It's
2?
just a 2-hour meeting, hybrid
h-
meeting.
But how long do you have for the actual strategic planning process?
There's no guarantee I'm leading it. They're in town. They like
Mhm.
want someone to help kick off with the board.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm just doing a 2-hour engagement in the morning with half the board in the room and half the board virtual.
Okay.
It's a hybrid meeting.
Right. Got
So
it.
I don't know how long their process is. They haven't even started it. I'm not even a part of the planning for it. They keep
Okay.
saying, well,
So
you
is
might
this
be if we like what you do, essentially, or something like
Oh,
that.
okay. All right. So
I don't
they
think I
want a
really
dog and
want
pony
to.
show. They want you to show off. They want to
Yeah.
leave. You want them, I'm guessing you want them to leave feeling engaged, energized, and activated.
Yeah. Oh, this
And
is
that
what the ED wants. This is
Yeah.
this is what they want to do. Yeah.
Okay. So what is going to be most relevant to them in that 2 hours that they can walk away and feel that way, that they haven't wasted any time and they know you're the one?
Well, it's the key outcome, which is like surfacing board priorities.
Okay.
What does the board feel are going to be priorities for them to address over the next
And
3 to 5 years?
do they know yet what those priorities are? Or are you
They
helping
do not.
harvest? They do not know that yet.
We're driving towards that in 2 hours.
Great. Okay. So do they know each other?
Yeah, I don't know the degree of relationship in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They will have already been working together for an hour and a half. I come in for 2, and then they have
Okay.
more board business after I leave.
Okay.
So it sounds like the board and the staff are very familiar with each other.
Great.
Yes.
That's great to know. And since they're already going to be in a room together for an hour and a half before you come in, do you know what they're doing before you come in?
Yeah, typical board business, bunch of reporting. When I spoke with them and I told them, like, I think the relational piece and the connection is key. I
Mhm.
invite you to make sure you do something during that early time to, start to really ground folks in
Mhm.
relationship, so that because I'm telling them, like, I have 2 hours, I don't have time to like do a bunch of relationship building, which I prioritize always, but
Right.
it's not within the agenda that I have.
Well, and I was going to say that's the relationship building that's going to build trust with each other and trust with you that's going to make that a meaningful experience, right?
Mhm.
So what kind of ideas do you have so far?
Ideas for the agenda.
Yeah, for your section. Yeah.
We are going to, um, it's a 3-part agenda. We're
Mhm.
gonna surface trends and drivers,
Great.
current trends and drivers that's gonna be launched by the executive director who's speaking to a larger national trend. This is a HIV medicine, American Academy of HIV Medicine.
Okay.
So there's a huge trend toward the end of this epidemic. He's going to speak to that, and then we're going to surface additional trends and drivers. Then we're going to move from trends and drivers to higher level to think about a vision. So like,
Mhm.
if these are the trends and drivers that are really moving this work, then where do we imagine the academy in 10 years
Mhm.
from now?
Okay.
Right. So we'll move
Okay.
towards trends and drivers to a vision. It's not going to be fully fleshed out, but I'm
No.
getting them to think big picture, long term.
Right.
And then we'll drop down a level and then start to surface what do they think are going to be the priorities for the next 3 to 5 years,
Uh-huh.
in order to respond to these trends and drivers and to move towards this vision.
Okay. Now I'm Grove trained, so I have those pieces in my head. So
Me
this may
too.
or may not match your aesthetic or your
Mhm.
style. Do you have any visuals so far that you are thinking of that you're like,
Absolutely. I
okay,
literally
can you show me?
Can I show you? Well,
Yeah.
I drew it already and it'll be drawn live, but the hybrid group's going to be it's a mashup uh of the context map and of a mandala vision and
Mm-hmm.
a ground level piece. So I
Okay.
literally threw those elements into Procreate and created a graphic template that they're going to be using for the virtual folks. And then I'll be drawing it live while I'm doing it with the group in the
So
room.
can you show us that?
Can I show you
Can you
that?
share
Hey,
share that?
you won't tell David them that I'm
No.
mashing up their charts.
No, I'm not
Um,
going to tell anybody.
Okay.
No,
cool.
because here, let me tell you why. Oh, well, I would say you need to redraw. No, do whatever you
So
want, but I would
This
always try to redraw it.
Well, this is virtual. I mean, I could
Yeah.
redraw it, but
Yeah.
literally I didn't know that I had to do a virtual component until yesterday. And
Okay.
they're like, well, how are we going
Wow.
to do this? So
And
I
you're
like
doing
just
that, right? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
literally just mashed it up,
That's great.
and then it'll look like that. So
Okay.
like I'll draw it. It won't look like that when I draw it. It'll be similar.
Sure.
But
Yeah. 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 No, I was going to draw it out for you, but this is really similar to what I would have done.
mhm.
So is there more on this mural page?
Not just the agenda.
Okay. All right. So this to me is a lot to look at for an hour and a half or two, however long you have with them. I would 2 hours. I love this as a big picture. And if they want to walk away with a big picture, that's great. Like perfect. Don't
Mhm.
change a thing. For me, I would,
Create more
I, w-
space.
what's that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'd break it up. I would really
Mhm.
break it up so that because if someone is working on their vision true to their core, you don't want them to be, affected or influenced by trends and drivers.
Well,
Or do
I
you?
I do.
Okay.
I
Okay. Okay.
intentionally am driving from trends and drivers up. So my goal is for them for this template to
Uh-huh.
move their thinking to a higher level. So if these trends and drivers are happening, they're moving us towards,
Hmm.
a possible future. Um,
Excellent. Okay.
Generally that's like, oh, we would do that. I would take that away, but like
Hmm.
this is one chart, two
Hmm.
hours. I'm not
Yeah.
planning on moving paper or any of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm
Super.
using it to drive them.
And do you have someone that's going to be online that you're going to be working or someone else is going to be working with lockstep to make sure that you've got all of their inputs?
Correct. There are two
Awesome.
staff members that are gonna be driving mural. I trained them yesterday, and then
Wow. Way
I'll
to
be in the
go.
room facilitating. Half the
I'm
board's
like,
in the room,
I'm
half
like, Makeda, let's talk. I got a job for you.
I told him
This is
I don't
great.
prefer, I would not have done this if I had known it was gonna be a hybrid meeting. He said we
Right.
might have 4 board members on virtual,
Hmm.
and well, most of us will be in the room. I'm like, okay, great, but I won't facilitate to the virtual folks. You have somebody else manage that. That's what I tell people, like hybrid
Yeah.
meetings generally are very challenging, but then they got their they kind of got their RSVPs, and he's like, well, there's actually going to be 10 people virtual. And
Jeez.
so
Okay.
that I got that news Thursday,
Yeah.
dropped in on that and trained them yesterday, and then
Yeah.
we'll do this meeting tomorrow. They're all flying today. So
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, congratulations on the
that's why I
job.
literally pulled pieces of their.
And thank you for so eloquently and succinctly answering my questions. Does anybody else have any questions for Makeda before I make a suggestion? What questions do you have? If this were
No
your
questions,
story,
just celebrations. It looks great and
yeah,
it's amazing.
it does look great and you're pulling it together. Way to go. And I hope you get the job. So
I'm
I
not
want
sure I
to,
want it.
oh, then good. Then you're going to
Yeah,
know, aren't you? So the
yeah.
best thing you can do is set them up for success and give them a
That's
hug
my goal.
goodbye. Yeah,
That's my goal. Yeah.
good. There you go. All right. So good to know. And you might fall in love with them in the process, who knows? But the idea here is how are you going to drive this home? What's the final thing you're going to do before you drop out of the room?
Um, I'm going to summarize and verbally, and if I can, where I can visually synthesize what their priorities are, how they're emerging.
Hmm.
Because I don't
Okay,
anticipate having those fully fleshed at the end of the meeting. So I will
right.
let them know clearly that my job is to take that and give it back to them and say, here's what you said.
Yeah.
There will be a lot of sticky notes in the priority process and in the
Mhm.
visioning process. And I'm not trying to make it pretty and all fully
No,
baked.
it's a working session.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I will finish it for them. So
Yeah.
as long as they can see the emerging priorities at the end of
Great.
that meeting, I will call it a win.
Great. Because the reason why I was asking is because a great way to like finish that up is to do a top 5. If you're
Mhm.
familiar with the Grove, I love the top 5 chart. But it doesn't sound because it's emerging that they're ready for that yet. So I think that's great that you're leaving them in that place. Do you have, and not that you have to answer me but you don't have to answer this question for me, but answer it for yourself. Do you have someone you can give this work to if you don't want it? and it can be a qualified lead because you've done enough work with them that you could actually take a commission before passing that off as a
Potentially,
okay.
yes.
So think about that.
Yeah.
And if you don't, or if you need a bigger network, then I can put you in. Do you know Brian Tirallo?
I do not.
Okay. I'm happy to introduce any of you to Brian Tirallo, but he has a great network and would probably love to partner with you on work going forward. I'll just speak for him there.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
I live in Seattle.
Okay. All right.
I have a woefully small network of folks for referral.
Okay.
To be honest, in
Yeah.
terms of people that I know and trust that
Yeah.
can carry work forward.
Okay.
So
Well, if
yeah,
anybody has work and you need a visual practitioner, or if you want to pass off work, then I can introduce you to Brian. And I get work from him, and he gives a lot of work away, a lot. Like I get
he's the
emails.
networker.
Yeah, we call him a rainmaker because he literally goes out and gets work and then gives it to all of us. And he's always done that. Yeah. So
Okay.
he's a good person to know. So what can we do to help you feel confident and successful going into tomorrow?
I've appreciated the feedback and the suggestions. You know, you want to space it out, and I understand that. I like to generally have more space. Any other suggestions or feedback on that chart? You know, because again, it's a mashup.
As I was asking questions, you revealed all the answers. I mean, you're thinking right in line to the way that I would. Does anyone else have any feedback or suggestions or insights for Makeda?
I have a question. So Makeda, was the graph that you showed us online, was that something that you already had, or because I'm not.
No, so that is, and I say a mashup, it's literally, I took two Grove graphic charts, digital versions, and I put them into Procreate, and I chopped up and pulled the pieces that I wanted. And so I created that template. You know, I'm going to draw it live in the room, but I know that a vision chart just needs to have like this high level, you know, kind of a sunburst starry component that says, hey, look out there. And I know that, you know, I think about trends and drivers as arrows, things that are moving an organization or work forward. So I just took those two concepts, and I wanted to have a horizon line, because as a Grove trained practitioner, the energy and the attention, all that stuff is up high. And I don't want this board to get tactical or get operational, which is what happens when you get out onto the ground level. They start, because they're all clinicians and they're board members of this academy. So they know what's going on the ground. And my goal and my work during this meeting will be to keep them from thinking tactically and trying to figure out why or how something's going to happen, and just stay at a high level. So creating that template in that way and putting the ground at the very bottom says, we're working up here. We're not on the ground doing this work, trying to figure out how, and when they get caught up in that, I will be bringing them back up. That's going to be my big task all through that meeting, is constantly bringing people up from thinking on the ground to the high level thinking that I'm asking them to do.
Great. You know, also, because I saw the arrows going that way, which was your trends, right, and drivers, and then
Trends and drivers.
Would you share it again?
Could I share it again? Sure.
Could you kind of just explain it? That would be great.
What can I offer here? So the phases of the meeting will work from trends and drivers. This is a mural. I threw sticky notes on there so people will work at the size that I want them to work at. One practitioner will be working on this side, the other will work on this side.
Oh, I got it. So they're both trends and drivers.
They're both trends and drivers,
Got it.
But there's two breakout rooms. They'll be working like that. I just threw this in here so that they could see that you're going to create a vision. You know, now this question right here, this is a question that I pulled from the AI Appreciative, the Encyclopedia of Appreciative Questions. You know, it's just imagine the academy 10 years from now, what do you see? But if I read the whole question that I'm asking, which is, considering the trajectory of the HID epidemic and the trends and drivers that we've identified, imagine the academy 10 years from now. What do you see? So it's inviting them forward. And
yeah,
we'll just
and it's kind of AI. I mean, you could dig a little bit deeper to make a little bit more feely, like what have we accomplished? That kind of thing. But what do we see? It's a vision. How do we see ourselves in 10 years? Like being able to see that, but making it a little bit more positive. You can spin it a little bit more. You don't have to. But now that I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, it does need to be all in one chart because it is only an hour and a half. This is a lot to do.
2 hours. It's
2 hours.
I'm
It's still a lot. It's still
I actually
a lot.
have like a 20-minute buffer on the back. I was like, well, actually, how much extra time if I have?
Oh,
so
good for you. Way to negotiate. Nice. Yeah.
Just in case. And so then we'll drop down to strategic priorities. And the question that's guiding that conversation is this. And there's 4 buckets. These are their organizational buckets. Connect, they're like their pillars. Connect, credential, advocate, educate. So I want them to think, what do we need to prioritize in each of these, your own 4 pillars over the next 3 to 5 years? What are we doing around our credentialing? What are you doing around your education? What are you doing around advocacy? Because they do policy work. Connecting, it's a network membership based academy. So what's happening there?
Can you move it up again? I just wanted to see what you.
And Maqueda, what Heather was suggesting, maybe when to get to this completed, it might be easier if we make small charts of each part, so it's not like so overwhelming, no? Like or maybe the way to present it.
Yeah, but now that I understand that he's got only 2 hours, this is a lot to do in 2 hours. I think it's fine because they need to come to a certain kind of consensus in 2 hours. And board leaders are really comfortable with that. A lot of on the ground people and, the vital many, they need to explore more because they don't have a lot of control and influence. But board members are like, these are decision makers. Yeah, I think they're going to be able to be okay in that instance.
And the last thing I'll say, Marina, is the reason I put it all on one chart is because I want it to guide their thinking. I want them to see where we're going, not just that we're going to do this piece and then we're going to do this piece and we're going to do this piece. This is the flow of the whole day. It all drives to these priorities.
The good thing about that is that I think unconsciously we measure the time we have and we calculate how deep we can go. So the good thing about that is that they won't spend the whole hour talking about their mission or whatever. They will just try to fill it up. And that's such a different, that's a big shift.
It is a big shift, especially for those of us who want to make sure we hear all the voices in the room. We've flipped over every single rock and, and with a board like this, it's like, they're going to get there. They just want to see what he's going to bring.
Sometimes maybe I think to get the essentials is good. Sometimes maybe just to add and make sure all the categories there are really essential, no? So they have also time to get a little depth. Because sometimes we're very ambitious and then people tend to leave the meeting feeling like, well, but we didn't touch the thing.
Yeah. So one way to get depth is now to go back and somewhere between the landscape and the vision, if you're going to have room in the written one or whatever you give back to them, maybe if you've got a little bit of time at the end that you take your own notes, but maybe not show them, but it's the kapow at the end that you give them, is what is the success criteria in order for us to get there? Right. So we can put out the trends, we can put out the vision, we can put out this. But unless we understand what's going to help us get there, how do we truly know that it's going to happen? Right. Yeah. So what's that success criteria? And if they go, what do you mean? It's like, they're always going to go to time and money. Do we have the time? Do we have the money? Do we have the people to pull this off? Do you have the culture that's going to withstand this kind of change?
And that would be something that I will add in my summary report.
Exactly. And that's fine.
I mean, next steps, I'll always say, here's the next steps, and you can consider this.
So just because I'm just because I'm Grove trained and I teach at the Grove, I do have to say one thing, and I'm not going to, this isn't a slap on the hand to you, Makeda, because I honestly am not policing their work and I don't have a say, but I will say that I feel, and a lot of my colleagues do too, is that they don't own the copyright on squares and circles and arrows, but
Right.
they do own the copyright of their actual charts. So when you cut those up and do things with them, it's messing with their brand and their IP. But I just want to let everybody know I'm not against drawing very similar, if not, you know, very close to the metaphors, because they use a lot of landscape metaphors, and landscape metaphors are beautiful. They really work, and they're very customizable to a lot of different things.
Okay.
So thank you for sharing that with us.
I
Yeah.
will redraw that.
Yeah,
I
because
can draw
that won't
by
take long.
hand and get rid of their stuff. And
Exactly.
I will do
Exactly.
that.
Because
Thank
you've
you.
essentially recomposed and customized for you. So yep, that's great. I love it. You
Thanks
did
for
great.
saying so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
Makeda, I just want to say that it looked great. I mean, it really did. You know, what I wanted to ask you too was, and I love when you explain, and this is probably being a Grove trainer or whatever, explain, you know, kind of rising up to this area, because it really took my focus off the ground. And most of the, I think people in the board, they're more big picture thinkers. So I think that's really beautiful, in being able to see that and see that everything is going to that vision. And then on the ground, what do we have to do, you know, according to our pillars to make that happen? And also, which is really cool, is that what do we have to do to make that happen? That strategic part you have can also start to reveal the gaps of what they don't have.
Sure.
So I think that that's really kind of cool. In oh my gosh, this is what we have. This is what aligns with our pillars, but this is what we need to fill in to make all of this happen. So I really love that. I really love that. Can I ask you, the people that you train, are they going to be writing the things? Are you going to do annotation where everybody writes in to sticky notes? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Some of it's sticky notes. The other part's just going to be report outs after 3, 2, 1, and then I'll be writing, because I can track the group live and fill things in. Yeah, so it's a bit of both.
Got it.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing. That was really great.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that they're going to be engaged and activated. The level in which they're going to be energized is how you show up, because you have such great energy, and you get to decide what level you want to bring them, because that's going to reflect what they're hiring, right? Or not.
Right.
And that's up to you. So good for you for having that boundary and knowing, because that's part of your decision model, Makeda. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Makeda, thanks for sharing, because this was very helpful for me to be able to know how to take what we've been learning and apply it. So that, I mean, it was like telling me a story, and I go, oh, now I get it.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you. That was
sorry. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So we didn't do a lot of rolling up the sleeves. It was more like him telling a story and us going, yay, Makeda, and here's some feedback, but well done. But it's great to hear how you think, because this is the way visual thinking works in terms of that outcome. You know the purpose, and you created a visual to go along with that. So great.
I'm wondering, Heather, if you think there'd be value in sharing. You started to draft that out. I said those 3 things: trends, drivers, priorities, vision, and you had started to sketch it out. You want to add any flesh to that as like how you would think about it?
Sure. I'd be happy to.
Any other perspective?
Yeah, I think that's great. And thank you for inviting me to do that. And sometimes what that looks like is literally writing things down and cutting them up. For me, I would do this. And remember, I stopped short because I started asking questions, and Makeda happened to have all the answers to the questions that I asked. It was like, oh, I don't have to design this for him. He has this figured out. What I might consider doing is doing this vision at the very top of the page, and it could literally look like a half circle, right? So this is very, very rough, folks. This isn't what the final piece looks like, but there's your vision. you've got the trends and drivers, and this was going to be, well, let me start with the priorities first, because I saw arrows happening like this towards the vision. These are all priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you've got your priority number 1. And if they can distinguish them down into top 3, that's mnemonic, it's easy to remember, then they can decide what their objectives and their actual to-do, their to-dos are in each one of these. And then when it comes to the trends and drivers, these were going to be almost like, I wouldn't do more arrows, but it's almost like these are force fields. Like these are things that are going to be in here.
Influencing, yeah.
Yeah. And then here are your success criteria, right? So now at the very beginning, I didn't have that. I didn't have those other 4 things that you had, those icons, but you could put them down here. So literally that's how quickly I work, is taking all those pieces and boom, that's it. I would have, if it were a long full day thing, I would have broken those down into like 3 or 4 different charts.
Different charts, absolutely.
Exactly. But since you have that hour and a half, you're right in that you've got to hyper focus them into one visual. Yeah. Yeah. So literally all the same, these are all the same shapes, just configured a completely different way.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good.
I love watching artists.
That's it. And to get into the mind of preparing for something is different than me showing you examples of what I've done, right? It's just a different, it's a totally different process. I can tell you my lessons learned, which is great, but I can't tell you but it's this process that you do need to see. And it was great to hear Makeda, because he did talk about some of the things he had to think about as he went through it. So that's great. Good. Now, Marina, it looks like you did some you clarified goal clarity on her desired impact, income, work-life balance, empathy map, and pains and gains to each client profile. Final grid. Oh my gosh. So this is the agenda.
I'm
Do you have some
also, as we talk, you're inspiring me. I'm going to show you my screen as well.
Okay, super.
But it's very, very simple. I think, I don't know. This is what I'm working with her. And one of the things, I was just thinking sometimes just this might be the final outcome, because I think the person is really contacting me because she really needs clarity and end up with something very clear. But to get that clarity on her prices, her services, all that, she really, like, I made her get a bit lost, and really dream where you want to go and how do you get there, because your prices will depend on that, in what is your dream, and I put this golden frame because I'm planning to do a dream session with her, and I'm planning to draw. She's been doing a lot of work, and then I'm planning to draw what she's dreaming about. And then also, I think this is it. And she needs to be very clear on what are the type of profiles. So I was also planning to use with her something that is like empathy maps, something that. And one thing that I figure talking to her that it might be quite deeper, but I think she's struggling with value somehow. So I was planning to do some kind of chart to help her to map what can be blocking. And because she wants clarity and she wants value. And there is something related with the confidence of the value of the things we do. And so I've been, but one thing that is really helping me today also is just grids, how good grids are, because we tend to talk so much, but then you leave with a grid and you're very clear. She just wants to say what to offer, how to explain it, and how much is it. And I'm pretty sure even for myself, I have done this, not like when I've done this, I got so much clarity. When I've done it in this kind of structured way, more than just, I don't know, just, so.
Can I ask, how many sessions do you have with her?
I'm having a session after each class that I'm having with you. We have a session about that.
Okay,
so
great.
You're really feeding me into
so
the next
this is
one.
multi-sessions. You're not trying to good. I'm like, you can't get here in a day.
She's dreaming on her own, and then she's gonna be sharing her dreaming. And I am with you now in looking at the
Yeah.
next session. And I'm realizing she needs to set up some goals. So this is impact, well-being, and income. So that will help her. That's what we identify will determine her prices, because it's actually the lifestyle she's creating.
Excellent.
So,
Is she good at journaling, or, I mean, are you having her journal about those things too?
yeah, I was planning to, I mean, this week, she's working on one hand, she's looking outside because she's dreaming. I invite her to look at other type of companies or other type of people that inspire her, that are doing things that can feed her, and maybe give her, even see how they price things, and what do they offer, and who is their client. So a bit like into the dreaming, I put her all into this. And also she's gonna be writing on just dreaming about how is her life looking like in a few years, and what is her lifestyle, what is around her, what does she see, all of that. And then I think that's gonna be, I told her she can journal, she can draw, she can, as she's amazing, she's also a designer, so we'll see what she comes up with. And I think that was it. And then I made her make a grid of related with where she is at into all these three. So kind of we have these three parameters that are guiding us, because if not, it gets,
So 2 things that I heard you say several times was she wants clarity and she wants to understand her value. And the reason why I asked if she journals is that you can't give her that. You have to create a space for her to realize that, and the tools to help her there, right? And so that's why I asked if you were asking her to write, because that's just another way for her to process. But the question is, and I don't know if it's her desired outcome, if that's the clarity and the value is ultimately hers, if that's part of that, or if that's a major part of it, but making sure that every time you meet with her, that she leaves with some level of clarity that she didn't have before she had that session with you.
Yeah, that's what I did. One of the things that I share with her.
And so I want to ask Makeda and Susan, do you have any questions or insights for Marina?
Yeah, just sorry to answer. You said I read about these forces of vital force, like because the first session we really saw when is she feeling successful in impact, value, and work-life balance. And so we had a lot of chats, and she's been reflected, and her goal is to fill up this grid and tell me, what are the things that you can identify that makes you feel successful in impact, value, and that's in the first stage of the where she was at in discovering. And then we'll see in dreaming also how it looks like. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. What questions? Yeah.
Really experimenting here.
Yeah.
Marina, so what was the areas that you were focused on? Well-being was one. What was the others?
We have impact, value, and work-life balance.
Work-life balance. Okay. Got it.
Marina,
yeah,
I know. How would you draw each of those concepts? And have you considered taking away the grid, and have you thought about how you could make that grid? Because I agree that boxes and grids are how could you make that a visual component? I would invite you to think about how to do that without even going too far.
without going into the grid boring mode. Yeah. I think to me,
make it more visual.
What I worked it was in choosing the right words, because of, for example, value. She asked me for prices, but we end up talking about value. And and different things like that, like, because she doesn't always get paid money, and she has other ways. So it was difficult to find good icons, because I could determine with value, I was putting like golden blocks actually. And I don't know what I did.
But you're an illustrator too, though, right, Marina?
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable drawing? Yeah.
there's something that I really love. I had a teacher who was teaching, well, when I started drawing again, and she used to put everything into a golden framework, into a golden frame. When we drew something, and the level of drawing was very, very different, but she took some of the very naive drawings and she put them into this amazing golden frame, and they look so cool, you know, that, and that's what I was planning to bring into value. Like, let's put a golden frame on these services that you have, or let's put, like, to try to bring a metaphor to that without determining how value, like what is value for her.
Could you do that first and then put the golden frame at the very end so that she then, like, it comes together for her? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Only because I love, I mean, I keep saying kapow. I have it written really big right next to me here. I just love the reveal, the feeling that you give them if they haven't quite gotten there at the very end. It's like, boom, you just did it, you know? I don't know.
Wow,
Maybe that's a little
yeah.
cheesy, but we all
No,
have
I
different
think,
approaches.
I like it.
Yeah. Because
and
when
then
you
with these
lead with
others,
that, it sort of goes, it's up here and it's sort of like asking a question like, what's the best way? And it's like, oh, that's a little overwhelming. But if you just start with, you know, some simple drawings and some simple pictures, and maybe you're co-creating a collage or something, and then you put a frame on it, you're like, you've presented it
yeah,
to her. She can now
yeah.
present it to the rest of the world that she owns this. She's contained
Mm,
it, you know,
mm.
it's
Yeah, and
ready.
I think that's the type of thing that you keep for yourself and you see every day, and it sinks in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
So
I like it.
is this her impact that she's making on the world? And
Yeah, she's a breath worker. She does, it's some kind of breathing exercises. She's an expert into, it's very much about how to deal with your own emotions and how to, and she does group work. And yeah, I think she's amazing professional, and she's looking for more awareness on what she does and how the prices. And this was the initial request, but I think the journey of these 5 sessions is trying to go deeper on a very simple request. Was just like, I would like to say how to express my services and how much they are. But there were so many questions behind that, like who is this for, and how do we set prices? Like, how do you set prices? I mean, you can just look at what prices are there, but I think there can be a deeper way to get there.
Marina, I'm listening for the visual metaphor that would contain those three buckets, like work-life balance, value, and what was the third one?
And well-being, like life work balance, impact and value.
So like you said she's a breath worker, and I'm thinking about the cycle of the breath. You know, there's the inhale, there's a hold, there's an exhale, there's a hold, or there's a turning point. I'm like, how could that fit in a visual metaphor that would really spark her thinking? That's what I'm looking for in what you're sharing.
That's really cool.
Then you just like figure out how to make those 3 buckets of rows and fit a metaphor that she's going to really be able to like relate to. That's
I guess.
Is there an image of, yes, and is there an image of her? Okay, is there an image of her doing her work?
Yeah, I also got an image of her.
Great.
Yeah, I did. I am a bit lost in the process, but I this week she's working on things, and I asked her to inhale and look at other companies and people that inspire her. So this kind of the inhale, because she was inspired, and then the exhale was more like, okay, let's dream and let's see what comes up. So maybe that's nice. In the process, we can kind of, when she works on her own, get something from the outside and then get something from in with this. I did this, but then, I don't have, to me, it's been really hard to have the whole picture, because I'm also learning the process in the
you're building the plane as you fly
it. And sometimes it's a bit funny.
And building on what Makeda said, I mean, he prompted the visual and you had it right there, right? If you had that picture of her doing her best work, and you've got that, you work in Procreate, right? So you could have that image of her in the background and you could have the breath coming out with those attributes. And that's a final image for her to hold, just like the frame. That if you give her very clear images of how she can see herself doing this work, then she can walk away with those and have that kind of clarity.
Yeah.
So you mean to have like a visual that will have the most clear points that we're getting, no?
Mhm.
Kind of
What are the high level pieces, right? If she's, if she's in meditation position and she's got her eyes closed or whatever, but you've got a lot of space around her, whether it's in the picture or you clip her out and put her in a scene, and then you show those breath work of those, yes, those high level or those really impactful words that you've heard her say. Here's the clarity. Here's what you are reflecting back to her that she's told you to bring her clarity.
Yeah, I've been doing a PowerPoint. So we are
Mhm.
kind of, and that's the way we are harvesting the process, but it's definitely linear and it's
Yeah.
not like and every time we close a session, I'm trying to get her to bring something very specific and clear, and then, yeah, maybe inspire and then go to and I'm planning that she's already doing some work before coming in the session. So she gets more inspiration. But
but this could just be like one
but
final
this will be
piece.
something that is
The
kind of
kapow.
an overview.
Yeah, just the final takeaway, because she can see all that work. But and Christina Merkley says this. She says the map that you just did is not the way. That's your past. You've been there. Like, you can go back and look at it, but you don't want to stay in that energy because that's who you were. You want to become who you want to be. Right. So if you were to give her an overview, here's the highlight, the kapow, the masterpiece, and maybe there's a gold frame around it. Who knows, with some of those words, you've given her a key takeaway that she can then really own.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I think Maqueda's, it's a good point. How could we have an overview of the journey, of the main takeaway. So when we finish, it can be just close to her. And
so Marina, can I ask,
yeah,
you said that she is a drawer as well.
Well, she's an amazing person. She's also like a graphic designer. So but she.
So my thought, just building off of what Makeda said, is that as things unfold, it would be really interesting to see how she interprets the three of these things coming together, rather than you interpreting it for her. Since she is, she does draw and stuff, visually, what does that look like for her? Because I think if it comes from her out of how she feels, because she is a filler. I mean, she probably does a lot of work that I do, somatic work, and very much of the heart and the breath and stuff. And what we do is I get my clients out of what they're feeling. What does that look like for you? And I think she, if anybody, could draw this. And being in that space of uncertainty is kind of good, because then you're not setting an expectation for her. She's unfolding and going, oh, now I see how all of this comes together. And let me put this in a graphic and let me show you what this looks like. Then it could be.
So you mean not to guide her? Because my sense is that, and she's doing something like that, between the sessions.
Guide her. But what I'm saying is that as you're guiding her, having her unfold what that looks like for her, because as she's doing each piece, then she'll see the pieces, and then how do you integrate all this? If you were to,
what do you mean with how that looks to her? You mean, for example, in the dream stage, to picture herself how it looks like? Yeah, we're doing that.
We're drawing it too, and drawing it because.
I guess I'm into this grid because I think in a way she really looks for clarity, and to have just a takeaway that is very, very simple. But I see your point.
Yeah, there is this nuance that a lot of coaches and facilitators have, and that we probably can't even pick up on, even if we talked about it for another hour. And I'm looking at the time. I just met with a client yesterday, and you try something and then you go, that didn't work. And then you try something else, and not just because you're throwing anything at it, but they give you clues about who they are. And how does that lead to the next question or the next thing that you write down? Because when you write something down in front of a person that they said it, that has a very powerful impact on them.
It does.
Even if they're on the
Heather,
other side of your hand, even if they're not seeing it, but they saw you write it down, they use that as now a new milestone to work from, a new place in which to speak from. Or they'll say, no, that's not as important as what I thought it was. Let me say something else. Let's talk about something else. So
what I did, Heather, just to close, is that I use the annotation, because I'm testing with her, and she's letting me every week. We're gonna use a different tool, and I was very like a bit frustrated with the annotation because I couldn't save things well. But I've been writing what she was saying. And next week, I think I'm going to move on to different way and also make her very active. Susan, I think that also makes a lot of sense.
So I introduced the annotation tool, and then you were all like, let's do it. And the delivery, the next session is really the actual how-to. It's the step, if you need some steps on how to do some of these things, clarity around that, I'm happy to help. So I know we have one more, but I also am very aware of the time. If you need to drop off, that's fine. Susan, I'm happy to stay with you if you have time, or we can do this in the office hours next week, because I know that this is a lot.
You're
Why
on
don't
mute
we
too.
do it in the office hours?
Are you available next Wednesday?
I think so. Hang on, let me look.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we don't.
Yeah, I put it aside.
You. Okay.
I put it aside.
Super. All right.
Yeah, but can I thank Makeda and Marina, because these things that you brought up are very helpful. I mean, it's like worth 1,000 words. I mean, it just goes, oh, okay, now I get it. Doesn't mean I can do it yet. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for your inputs. And I think you can do it, Susan. Just go with the flow. It's
So I want to check myself so that next week I don't cheat you at all. But did you walk away with any more visual templates than what you showed up with? And are you inspired to customize your own to meet your client's desired outcomes? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Are we good to go? Did we meet our payoff? That's such an important piece, that we actually get there. And I know that this is still just a sampler of the bigger work that we can do, but just want to remind everybody of office hours next week. And next Saturday, we are going to talk about destiny and deliver. So we're going to get into those nitty gritty, no kidding. What do we do when we're in person? What markers, what tools, what are some of the different products? What are we doing virtually? What are some of those tools? How do we make annotation better? What are my best practices? Things like that. So be thinking of the how, right? So now we are getting ready to deliver, and be putting on your, I really have to deliver this. I mean, Makeda did it today. He's doing it tomorrow, right? First thing, think about that. Think about what are your how-tos that you need to know. And I'll also be giving you some final pieces as you go out the door. Hopefully you feel a lot more confident, or hopefully you have more questions that will keep you interested in either AI or visuals or both, and want to go deeper into how that looks as we put it into practice.
Yeah.
Okay. So Makeda, good luck tomorrow. Sending you lots of good energy.
Yeah, I hope it turns out exactly the way you want it. The way
I find
you
that if
want
I
it.
have it clear in my head, that's how it will go. And I got this one really pretty clear. So thanks. I'll give you an update next week.
All right. That sounds great.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you,
All
Marina.
right.
Thank you, Susan. Great day.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.